You're probably thinking, who on earth is Mr. Branch Predictor? Well, he's lots of things. Passionate about teaching, for one.
I love to go into a classroom. I love to explain the tough things.
Never afraid to speak his mind.
That gets me into trouble all the time.
A marathon runner.
It's a chemical high, it's a psychological high. It's when you see that finish line and you just go for it.
And an engineer whose radical CPU designs in the 1980s sped up computer processing to levels that paved the way for the modern era of computing. Meet Yale Patt.
You know, I used to be a holy terror, but now I'm Mr. Mellows.
Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. In the field of CPU design, he's known around the world as Mr. Branch Predictor. To understand why, we need a little background in early computers.
Think of a computer program as a list of instructions that the computer must perform. A to-do list, if you will. Early computers would simply execute the instructions one at a time in the order given. Decades after the first computers, scientists realized they could do better than this by creating processors that could first look at the entire list and identify instructions that could be done simultaneously. Think of this as a dividing the to-do list amongst family members. One buys the fence while the other buys the paint. The problem is, computer programs also have to make decisions, just like we do in real life. In reality, our to-do list might look like this. Step 1, check the weather. If it's sunny, we do one thing. If it's raining, we do another. In a computer program, these decision points are called branches, and a typical program can have hundreds of them. Here, the computer spots 4 instructions that can be done simultaneously. But as we can't have both rain and no rain, doing all 4 instructions is a waste of time. So how does the computer know which branch will be relevant? The answer is that micro-architects like Yale Patt design CPUs that, well, guess. The better the rate of correct guesses, the faster the processor.
We don't call it a guesser, we call it a predictor because, you know, nobody pays big bucks for someone who guesses.
Patt entered the guessing game in 1981 with a wild idea, using aggressive branch prediction and a complex method of instruction processing dismissed by experts as impossible. Patt thought he could design a chip significantly faster than anything else in existence. He tuned out the naysayers and recruited 3 of his graduate students, Wen Mei-Hu, Steve Melvin, and Mike Shebanow. The team set out to do what the industry thought was impossible.
The 4 of us used to meet almost every day. Everybody laughed at us. You know, what you're doing is silly.
It wasn't easy. The team was designing architecture for chips that wouldn't exist for a decade.
There were times when some of my students wanted to give up.
But Patt was prepared for a marathon rather than a sprint.
And so I visited my folks and, Dad, I brought something for you. What's this? It's a medal. What for? New York City Marathon. You won the New York City Marathon? No, Dad, if you finish, they give you a medal. And then he looked at me, and for the first time I realized that it wasn't just my mother that was pushing me. He looked at me and he said, "You lost the New York City Marathon?"
To the astonishment of the entire computing industry, Patt and his students persevered. They published a paper in 1985 with a radical new design for a microprocessor so efficient that it opened the door to the modern era of high-performance computing.
In fact, that's what research is all about, accomplishing something that is unknown. Nobody has ever done it. And I'll tell you something, when you do it, and you get close to the answer, and you're treading on new territory, the heart pounds like you would not believe. It's the most incredible feeling.
Intel adopted Patt's technology 10 years later for the Pentium Pro.
And today, you know, every high-performance microprocessor out there embraces the concepts that we put forward back in 1985.
Today, Patt spends the majority of his time doing what he loves most, teaching the freshman class.
In fact, I would argue that the more senior you are, the better perspective you have, and the more you should be teaching the freshman course. And it turns out that it makes all the difference in the world.
And at 76, he has no plans to stop.
Do I consider myself an unusual person? Most people tell me I am. No, I don't know that I have any regrets. I'm doing it my way, you know.